Okay, if any of you have been following my channel, then you know that my players are currently being put through their paces in fantasy Rome. Now, one of the things that comes up in that kind of setting, one of the fantasies that players like to fulfill, is gladiator combat. Now, I've already included several things into the game to make that unique, including a new mechanic and system for combat where you can actually do skill checks in combat to steal the favor of the audience, and it makes the fights a little more engaging and a little different from standard combat encounters. But I want to take that to the next level. I'm looking to include, along with enemy gladiators, monsters, and of course animals, traps in the arena. So today, I'm going to see what I can put together out of my bits bins and come up with some unique traps for my gladiator arena. It's always a fun time to dig through a crafting bits bin and see what jumps out and inspires you. And no, I'm not just saying that as an excuse to keep hoarding. I genuinely love doing this part, and if you're a crafter and you're not keeping a bits bin, you should consider it. It's great for keeping extra materials on hand, fantastic for storing odd bits and bobs you might use later, and can be a source of inspiration when you're looking for a project. I wasn't sure what I was going to end up making yet, so I just kind of got out everything that inspired me. I've got an old medication lid that has an inner ring that lets it turn freely, a big MDF wheel that was from a cheap dollar store house that I didn't end up using, and some shiny squares. I don't know. I just like shiny things. I want these traps to be interactive. The idea is that they're thrown into an arena fight, and interacting with them on purpose gives the players, or enemies, a chance to steal the favor of the audience, which gives them advantage. But they should also be dangerous to the people using them. It's a calculated risk, a gamble, meant to entice the players and to make arena combat faster paced and more swingy than regular combat. In this case, I'm going to take advantage of the spinning mechanic in the bottle lid. I've made a quick foam base, and if you hot glue down just the inner ring on the bottom of the lid, it lets it continue to spin. That's going to be the mechanic for our trap, something like a spinning magical flamethrower that whenever someone gets close, they have to roll a die to see which way it spins and how far. This is all going to be built into the trap itself to make it easy to keep track of. For the look of it, I want something mechanical and kind of beaten up. This is a trap in a gladiator arena in a tiny little city in the middle of nowhere. It shouldn't look fresh and clean. It should look like it's been around the block a few times, it's seen some stuff, been beaten up, and has probably been just barely held together over the years by some poor, exhausted arena mechanic. And you could even build that into your game. Maybe the arena mechanic who maintains the trap is someone they find down at the bar one night and they have a chance to bribe him to make the traps behave a certain way. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna write that down though. I started to base coat the trap in black, and then as soon as I did, I realized I needed to add a lot more details. This didn't look anywhere close to where I wanted it. And you know what? That happens sometimes. It's fine. I just started adding more details and rebase coated it after. When it comes to tiny details on things like this, you can never really have too many. It's just a matter of balancing time spent on a given project versus what it's worth to your game. This is probably going to show up in a handful of arena fights, so I want it to at least look decent. So I get out some cardstock and some more beads and start to make it a little closer to my original vision. I also took some small beads and added them to each corner of the base. One corner has one, the next has two, and so on. This indicates the corner that the flamethrower will spin to when the die is rolled, so a D4 roll will tell you where to move the flamethrower at the start of every turn. Then I just base coat it again and start the paint job properly. For the magical flame effect, I'm using an old bit from the Nolzur's Beholder model, one of my favorite models, to indicate the magical flame. This will show the exact length of the flame on the table so that there's no confusion, and so it's a little more visually exciting. But that's totally optional. You can absolutely make this exact same trap without a visual for the spell effect, and you could even make it so that your players have to roll at the beginning of the fight to determine which spell it's using out of several. I just wanted to make something simple and flashy though that fits with the entertainment-based idea of arena combat. For the paint, I do a simple gray stone base this time, just using a dark gray, light gray dry brush, and a wash. And for the trap itself, I bust out a gold metallic, but wash it back down and kind of grime it up, first with a teal patina, and then once that's dry, a black wash as well. This both makes it look beat up and old, as well as adds more color to it. The spell effect and the gem to go with it get a coat of Express Colors Mystic Blue to make them pop, and then once they're dry, they just get affixed with super glue. I wanted something simpler for the second trap, and I came up with something that is very simple but hinges on movement and tactics and can be combined with other traps or even spell effects to change the course of the battle. Different character types, of course, have different abilities, and I like to give everyone a chance to shine. That includes characters who are more movement-based. To activate this movement-based trap, I add a switch to the center, using the shiny tile pieces from earlier. The rest of the trap gets covered in coffee stir sticks. If you're wondering why I added construction paper to the bottom, it's just so that the trap doesn't get caught on battle mats, foam terrain, whatever else I might use it with. Since it's going to be moving on the battlefield, I just want to make sure it's not damaging my stuff too. The stir sticks can be left to overhang the edges and then just trimmed clean after, once the tacky glue is dry. That's the fastest and easiest way to do it, unless you want to go with hot glue. Now, I prefer to avoid hot glue on a project of this size, since it's just too messy, and it's not really that strong. I age and batter the trap by adding a brown wash to everything, and then splotches and sprays of wash in other colors that could be a blood splatter or old dried stains from previous combat. Once all of that is dry, I add some pigment powders to match my desert setting, and that makes the trap look appropriately grimy. Again, these are meant to be very old, well-used traps, so I want them to reflect that. Men and women have died in these mechanisms before, and that history is built into their appearance. The idea with this trap is that when a character moves onto the switch, they can, as a bonus action, rotate the tile in place on the battlefield. Alone, this won't do much, but using clever tactics, a rogue or monk might rotate an enemy spellcaster into melee range of their barbarian and fighter, or if you combine it with the flame trap from earlier, you can rotate another trap around the battlefield to give everyone a serious recurring problem, unless they use their own turn to move the trap again. To do so, though, you have to risk getting hit by the flame trap yourself. Risk versus reward. And I'm sure this can also be used in lots of other hilarious ways that my players are going to very shortly educate me in. For my final arena trap, I dig into an old bag of wooden baubles to find something that works for a base. After a bit of trimming, I managed to glue two pieces together that I think will work as a sort of a statue or a decorative base for it. Mechanically, this is going to be the simplest one. This statue is going to contain magic focal crystals that, when a spell is cast next to the statue, amplify the damage of the spell. But it also automatically causes a roll on a chart for a wild magic surge. Now, some of the effects on that chart are helpful, some are benign, and some are really harmful to the caster. Keep in mind, interacting with this trap, just like the others, causes you to get a chance to win the favor of the arena audience, which is basically a single-use advantage token that can be stolen from you if you don't use it quickly enough. Now, not everyone likes wild surges, but it's a risk versus reward play. Will you take the gamble to make the audience love you and maybe turn the tide of battle in your favor? To texture the base, I use Galleria Sand Gel, an old favorite and standby for all kinds of subtle stony textures. Once it's dry, it will be perfect for dry brushing. I splodge a couple of random colors on the base, I used yellow and pink, and just wet blend them into each other as I go. After that, it's a brown wash and a light dry brush, and then a coat of silver for the decoration in the center and some black wash to shade it. Then it's the fun part and one of my favorite old crafting tricks when you're in need of magical crystals. Hot glue sticks are ideal for this purpose, and they're something that pretty much every crafter already owns. Just take an old knife and start carving into them at random angles. Be careful, of course, to use controlled cuts. You want the blade to go into the glue, not into your hand. Once I've carved up a handful of crystals, they're ideal candidates for contrast style paints, some light dry brushing, and then a brighter edge highlight near the tips of the crystals. While I get those painted up, I'd like to thank my very generous patrons, especially my terrain tier supporter Amanda Chisholm. Your support makes a huge difference both to me personally and to the quality of what I can do on the channel. Thank you. If anyone else is interested in supporting what I do here, there are links below to a number of ways to support the channel, Patreon included. Alternatively, just watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing makes a huge difference for a small channel like mine, and I really appreciate it. That about wraps it up for today, folks. 3 arena traps and 3 mechanics to help vary up our Gladiator combats. Not only can they be combined together as well, but these can also be dropped into dungeons, or in the case of the magic crystals, they'd make a great prop to use in a wizard tower, arcanist lab, or a necromancer lair. Thank you for watching and joining me on this video. Again, check out the links below if you want to support the channel, and have yourselves a great day. I'll see you on the next one.